Have you noticed how game developers insist on trying to make us think? No matter what I'm playing, there's usually some kind of puzzle shoehorned in somewhere. Whether I'm having Atreus and Mimir tell me the solution to a puzzle before I've even had a chance to mull them over, or fiddling with some kind of gigantic clockwork device when I'd rather be slaying demons, developers always seem to be trying to catch me out with sneaky brain teasers. For this video, we're looking at some gaming puzzles with solutions that are so wacky and preposterous, they defy belief. Some of these puzzles appeared in titles where you'd expect such trickery, whilst others appeared in games that were otherwise more or less sane. But either way, they're not the sort of thing that the average critical thinker could be expected to unravel with logical deduction. Only a very special kind of mind would have been able to solve all of these without a guide. So put your tinfoil hats on and let's dive in. I'm the perpetually stumped Ashton from TripleJump, and here are 10 ridiculous video game puzzles with weird solutions. Number 10. Close the DS. The Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass. Let's start things off at the lower end of the weirdness scale. We don't want to tie you up in mental knots straight away after all. This puzzle from The Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass is somewhat infamous in Hylian circles, requiring players to think outside of the box to progress. Or should that be, outside the game? Partway through Link's first DS-based adventure, the intrepid hero will find himself in the Temple of the Ocean King, in a room with a large sun symbol crest. In order to learn the location of the next quest, Link is given the clue: press the sacred crest against the sea chart to transfer it, causing most players who are already used to Zelda-style puzzles to search through Link's inventory for something that could help. The thing is, the player already had the necessary equipment to solve the puzzle in their real-life inventory, their DS. The answer is to close the DS, literally pressing the chart and the crest together for the desired effect. While similar brain teasers are seen in a couple of other DS games, this puzzle provides one of those rare gaming eureka moments, even if you did accidentally solve it by slamming your handheld shut in frustration. It's okay. We don't judge. Number 9. The Rubber Ducky, The Longest Journey. And now we descend directly into the realms of madness, with possibly the most infamous of the point-and-click adventure genre's most outrageous puzzle solutions, the dreaded Rubber Ducky. In 1999's The Longest Journey, players take on the role of student April Ryan, who has the ability to shift between two alternate worlds, and her goal is to keep these two realms separate. One of the roadblocks that stands in the way of this objective is a faulty fuse box outside the Mercury Theatre, which April must get into using a key. Said key is lying on a subway rail in the nearby Metro Centre. Careless, these theatre technicians. In order to retrieve it, April must assemble a mind-boggling contraption using a deflated rubber duck, which also requires a convoluted method to retrieve involving crumbs and a nearby seagull, a clothesline and a clamp. The whole process, starting from loosening the clamp and ending with picking up the key, comprises of over 12 ridiculous steps that range from obscure to completely esoteric in their own right, and come together to form a puzzle solution that only the truly dedicated or completely mad would ever solve on their own. Where were Atreus and Mimir for this one, eh? Number 8. Where the Dog. Simon the Sorcerer 2, The Lion, the Wizard and the Wardrobe. Everyone loves dogs, and there are lots of ways us humans can interact with our proverbial best friends. We can pet them, play with them, speak to them and more. Thankfully though, I don't hear much about people wanting to wear them. The thing is, in Simon the Sorcerer 2, The Lion, the Wizard and the Wardrobe, that's exactly what you must do if you want to get past a certain monster that blocks your progress. In order to sneak past this disgusting yet strangely polite abomination, Simon, our illustriously named protagonist, must ensure that he cannot be seen, heard or smelled by the beast. In order to not be seen, Simon must turn off the lights. Makes sense. In order to not be smelled, Simon must dip a tapestry in goblin sweat in order to mask his scent. Gross, but conceivable. In order to not be heard, Simon must do something far beyond the realms of mortal reasoning. See that hat icon in the bottom of the screen? That's the where command. Using that on the dog in your inventory while in the monster's room will cause Simon to perform a quick magic spell and turn the pup into fluffy shoes, thus enabling him to pad stealthily in front of the monster's many noses. Obvious when you think about it. Number 7. Kill the invisible spider. Magic Knight Rayearth. Despite sounding like a phrase that I might be heard yelling groggily whilst waking up from another nightmare, kill the invisible spider is actually the solution to a conundrum from the Saturn RPG adventure Magic Knight Rayearth. Based on the anime of the same name, this title chronicles the princess rescuing adventures of 3 8th grade girls from Tokyo who find themselves in the magical world of Sephiroth. One such adventure takes them to the monster-filled caverns in and around Lakatak Falls, and players are likely to eventually find themselves stuck in a locked room with no visible means of progression. Even worse, if you hang around in there long enough, you might even start taking damage from an unknown source. If you happen to be controlling the character Fu, however, and loose off a couple of her arrows in dismay, you might notice that their trajectory shifts, as if they're homing in on something. Well, at the risk of sounding like a crazy person, it's the invisible spider. Kill that 8-legged sneak, and you'll be able to progress, forever burdened with the unsettling knowledge that there could be an invisible spider next to you at all times. Thanks for that, Magic Knight Rayearth. Number 6. Reset the computer. X-Men. Another fourth wall breaker here, and one that's arguably less obnoxious than the Phantom Hourglass one we discussed earlier. This one comes from all the way back in 1993 with the Mega Drive title known as X-Men. Fans of Wolverine, Cyclops and pals will find themselves playing a fairly standard action platformer for most of the game, guiding their chosen X-Man through various locations whilst beating up the minions of Magneto, culminating in a face-off with the nefarious Spoonbender himself. A little while before this magnetic encounter, players will find themselves faced with a sense of urgency as the game appears to glitch out and a message reads across the top of the screen: reset the computer now. This takes place in a futuristic lab location where the walls are lined with computer monitors, so many 90s gamers found themselves stuck fast, frantically roaming the halls trying to find out which computer to reset. Have you noticed that the Mega Drive has a reset button on it? Yep, you actually had to reset the Mega Drive to continue. Not only was this kind of activity outside the comfort zone of most Sega players, but also the Mega Drive isn't even a computer, it's a console. Silly X-Men. Number 5. Guess the name of the gnome. King's Quest. Alright, it's time for another one of those old school adventure game puzzles that reigns in infamy. King's Quest, originally released all the way back in 1984, came from a time where developers weren't afraid to royally stump players with maddening difficulty or unnecessarily obtuse puzzles. Perhaps the king of unreasonable brain teasers comes from an old gnome, who claims to possess an important item for protagonist Sir Graham's journey. He will not relinquish said item, however, unless you guess his name. So this is a reference to the Rumpelstiltskin fairy tale, right? But if you guess that, however, the gnome will tell you that you are close, but offer no further information. One possible clue comes in the form of a note you might have picked up in a witch's house that says, "Sometimes it is wise to think backwards." Let's try Rumpelstiltskin backwards then. Nope, still no joy. The actual solution is to use an inverse alphabet, where A becomes Z, B becomes Y, and so on. And thus, typing the impenetrable series of letters IFNKOVHGROGHPRM into the game. Seriously, who would even be called that? You'd have better luck trying to guess the name of a random stranger on the street. At least their moniker will probably have vowels and consonants in an order that makes sense. Number 4. Fool the guard with an owl. Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake. Our next classic comes from the overactive and higher plane occupying mind of Hideo Kojima, and it's a brain teaser faced by pixelated Solid Snake that relies on more than a few breaks in accepted reality. In Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, released on the MSX2, our titular hero must infiltrate a heavily guarded facility in order to rescue a kidnapped scientist and put a stop to some nefarious weapons development. He'll find that plenty of guards and security systems are in his way, and one such obstacle comes in the form of a laser fence. With no clear means of passing through, gamers became stumped as how to progress, with the only clue coming from a nearby child who claims that, inexplicably, the lasers are deactivated at night. The game has no day-night cycle, so what gives? The clear solution is to acquire an egg from a nearby lab, wander around until an owl hatches from that egg, and then use the owl near the guard at the gate, causing it to hoot, thus convincing the guard that it is night time, so he'll diligently trot over and deactivate the laser fence. Do you not have a watch, man? Can you not see the sun? And why are there even owl eggs here? I have so many questions. Number 3. Distract the scientist with Garth's tongue. Wayne's World. Wayne's World, a 1992 comedy movie starring Mike Myers, that's probably most famous nowadays for that Bohemian Rhapsody scene, spawned a number of licensed games. Wayne and Garth showed up on the SNES, Mega Drive, NES, and more in various guises. But today we're paying particular attention to the capstone published PC title, and you guessed it, it's an adventure game. Compared to many puzzles in the genre, it isn't too difficult to happen upon the solution to this one, with a bit of trial and error. But said solution is so out there that it definitely warrants inclusion in our list. You see, at a certain point in the game, Wayne finds himself in a science lab and must free some mice from the cages there. Alas, a somewhat familiar-looking scientist stands in the way. Now, everyone knows the best way to distract a scientist, right? Come on, say it with me. Tongue gymnastics! That's right, to keep the scientist's attention elsewhere while Wayne frees the fairy prisoners, he gets Garth to show off his improbable tongue tricks. The bemused boffin is positively wrapped by the ensuing display, and the prisoners are released. We were especially entranced by the tongue lasso. Oh, does that make us scientists? Number 2, the frozen face towel. Forbidden Siren. You know what's worse than a convoluted puzzle? A convoluted puzzle that stretches across multiple levels. Multiple levels where you can't even think straight because everything is so spooky, might I add. In the PS2 survival horror game, Forbidden Siren, known as Siren in non-PAL regions, there's a puzzle that will have you performing a seemingly meaningless action in one stage, that of putting a wet face towel into a freezer, only to make use of it in the next stage in a fashion that is sort of logical in a weird video game way. So, let's say you happen to put the towel in the freezer while playing as one character. Later on, while playing as another character, you'll need said towel, now frozen, to distract a zombified officer of the law by balancing it over a gap between kitchen appliances and putting a piggy bank on top. Once the towel has thawed, the porcelain piggy will drop, causing the cop to investigate and letting the player steal the ID card he was guarding. Of course! Makes total sense. Seriously, how am I supposed to think about frozen face towels and piggy banks with all this spookiness going on? Sometimes you ask too much of me, video games. And number 1, cat hair mustache. Gabriel Knight 3, Blood of the Sacred, Blood of the Damned. Let's finish things off with a feline theme, as 1999 adventure game Gabriel Knight 3 Blood of the Sacred, Blood of the Damned presents players with a conundrum where the titular Mr. Knight must assume the identity of another man in order to make off with his bike rental. The man whose identity needs assuming has a mustache, so you might expect a trip to the local joke shop to pick up a comedy prop or something. But no, that won't fool this rental guy. Only a mustache made of real hair will do it. The answer is simple. Apply tape to a hole in a shed door and then scare a nearby cat with a spritzer. The cat will disappear into the shed and it'll shed a bit of hair too, thanks to your carefully applied tape. Use a packet of maple syrup to attach the hair to your face, and voila! A perfect cat hair moustache fit to fool any rental guy, police officer, or border control official. Let's just try to ignore Gabriel's distinctive muscular build, dazzling green eyes, and striking blonde hair, shall we? Also, it's really lucky he doesn't have an allergy. The rest of the game probably wouldn't be much fun if it was repeatedly interrupted by constant frenzied sneezing.